very difficult subject. I'm sure you are all enjoying it. Not knowing the composition of the audience, I was trying to see how I can relate this subject to all of you with all the diverse backgrounds that you have. So let me give a try at presenting my views. The most important point that I would like to make is what we are talking about here is a vision that has been developed thousands of years back in India by a method, by a technology, by a way of learning which has been very different than the technique and the methods and the way we study for last 200-300 years. There are two different paths of acquiring knowledge. And that is where the difference lies, because many terms that you may hear may not be quite familiar and may not make real, sometimes, meaning to what it is. But the two methods have been very different. Both methods have their own value. And what we call science and technology based on science is something acquired by a method which is, I call it, a method which is based on deduction, which is based on studying in parts, small things, and then putting them together and trying to understand the whole. So in order to understand the world around us, the nature, the way nature works, we try to break down the things in small units and try to bring up and put together and say, oh, this is why, this is how it works. So the whole method was developed in a way to study small parts, and from small parts try to understand the whole. In doing so, scientists understood this physical world by saying that, oh, this world consists of small things, because let us find out what is the smallest thing that makes this world. And they came up to the idea of atom. The word atom itself means one which cannot be divided further. It is the smallest particle of matter. And scientists kept on studying the smallest particle of matter, how this matter can be understood. And then the whole mechanical view of the world was developed, which is called the mechanistic worldview, developed by Newton. And Newton gave us this worldview, and it has a tremendous meaning. I cannot go into the details just now. But how the universe works, how this Earth is rotating around the sun, and how this galaxy is working, and what are the laws which are working. So the most important thing when Newton said the law of gravitation works. And it has a lot of implications. So in the scientific way, we start to understand things by breaking down it and then making a law, by making observations, and making observations everywhere in the world and making it so objective and saying, okay, even if I do my experiment in China, or I do in Africa, or I do in India, or in USA, the results must match. So that is an objective method of studying, and that is what is called science. And so it can be verified by not only one person, but thousands of scientists can work anywhere in the world and they can prove that yes, the laws of physics are correct. That means if you apply force to a stable object, it will move in the direction in which the force is applied. That is one observation. And that observation will be true anywhere in the world. This got a very special meaning because any common man will then say, okay, is it scientific? Which means, can you do the same thing which I did in my laboratory? Then it is okay. So, science became a study of the things in objective manner, and on basis of that, the whole thing developed. Last 200, 250 years, things have been developing in that line. So anything that was being subjective was considered to be meaningless. Subjective knowledge, therefore, got secondary. And the entire system of knowledge that India developed was based on subjective method. The knowledge was acquired by the rishis, whom we call seers and sages, that was based on their subjective study of this creation. They did not want to prove by going outside in the world. They said, we are going to go inside our mind and go deep into the mind and even transcend the limits of the mind and then experience what is the reality. And that is how they wanted to experience reality and express it. This method is very different because it is subjective. But all the same, it is a method. And not only one method, hundreds of methods were developed because each individual scientist, whom I call a rishi or a seer, he was sitting in a jungle, in a forest, and he was trying to study the technique. And he developed his technique and he came up with a conclusion about what is reality. So on the one side, science was claiming everything objectively. On the other side, there was a whole field of knowledge which was based on subjective knowledge. But please understand, the subjective knowledge also was concerning about the physical world. Many people did not know that the science that we call science today was also discovered by these Indian rishis on another method. We were so far advanced in India in the study of mathematics. Even today, when they want to describe the Becker's theorem in computer, they have to say Panini Becker's theorem now. That Panini discovered the theorem thousands of years back without going in a laboratory. So, rishis were there who developed the whole development of Ayurveda. The science was done by subjective study, and that subjective study they gave us a person like Sushruta, or a plastic surgeon whose picture is kept in Park and Davis in New York City. Who was that surgeon?
Park Davis.
Huh?
Park Davis.
Park Davis has kept that picture there. That means surgery. Many tools of surgery were developed by these scientists without going in a laboratory. Charak developed the whole science of medicine. And Sushruta developed this whole science. So, not only the science, engineering, any technology, and talk about language, talk about music. Every subject that has been developed thousands of years back by a technique which was all based on subjective way of learning. So I just want to emphasize only one point. That means there is a technique of acquiring knowledge which is subjective way of learning, and it is dependent upon the individual who wants to study. And he has a freedom to find the ultimate the way he wants to find. And the talks we have been hearing today about this holistic science and this way of thinking about spirituality and all that is something in the tradition of those lines, that is from where the knowledge has come, techniques have been developed. With different techniques, different achievements were made, which we call siddhi. That means the person who was able to do this work was able to come to a conclusion and say, this is the method to do it. Right? So you have got a whole list of methods. We call yoga and asana and meditation, whatever various words we are using. These are all the methods which are used to understand the reality. What is the reality? And so, fortunately it so happened that in the time of Einstein, he came up with a new development. And Einstein said there is a relativity, something called relativity. And he came up with theory of relativity. And the whole idea of quantum physics was developed. And with that, the whole technology changed. Whatever we are experiencing today, all the advancement, Einstein became responsible for it. But then this scientist came to a point where he said, oh my God, there is something important here. When I am observing something which is moving with the speed of light, then there is a strange phenomenon. The observer seems to be influencing the observation. And I'm of course sorry because I cannot go into this detail, otherwise the whole evening will be lost. But this is so beautiful. I get excited when I remember that the observer is influencing the observation. So, first time people started realizing that science cannot be after all so objective. Science is subjective. And therefore, the boundaries between science and spirituality started being diffused. There was a time when science and spirituality were two different paths. The people who were believing in spirituality, the subjective methods, these were all hocus-pocus methods. These were people who were just making up stories. These are not things which can be verified, so neglect them. And the science is perfect, objective, anybody can taste it, and there is no subjectivity there. That came to be a point where it became subjective, and these boundaries started merging. And a point came when people like David Bohm came, who came up with the idea that when the whole thing merged, he said, everything around this is nothing but vibrations. There is nothing called a reality. Everything is vibration. We are all vibrations. And these vibrations are all mixing, and they are merging and going around each other. What we see as separate entities is the limitation of our brain. It is because of our brain that we see you are separate than me. The table is separate from the chair. I am able to distinguish all these because of my brain. My brain is not able to conceive the whole thing as it is. Do you doubt it? No, you should not, because what X-ray is able to see, we are not able to see with our eyes. If we had the same power as X-ray is having, what would happen to life? It will be very miserable, I think. We will see everything, only bones here. And we will not see all the beauty that is there. By having a limitation, we are able to enjoy the beauty of life. So, please understand that science came to a point where boundaries disappear. And what was known by our rishis, when they described it, this is what scientists have described now. And that is it put in one word, which is called wholeness of creation and oneness of self. This is the important conclusion. Scientists today, now in America also, physicists and Vedantis are meeting together and discussing about this reality, what is the reality. And so, because I have a short time here, I want to tell you that today both the sides, the science and spirituality, are merging at one point. And they are trying to come to grip with it. So one thing was missing, because science said there are atoms and molecules and they build up this, and then ultimately this whole complex world comes. But now the idea of consciousness is coming. So what is consciousness then? Is it, what comes first, matter or consciousness? Who is first, God or we? What happened? So this whole confusion about consciousness has become discussed. And in Princeton, I was talking about with some people there, they want to put consciousness in quantum mechanical, some equations. Mathematically it can be put. Because the point is that if I cannot prove something mathematically, is it true or not? But the scientists and the highest level of intellectuals and the highest level of spiritualists are meeting together and saying, oh my God, there is something different. These people say thousands of years that seems to be true. And you read various scientists, including Einstein or the great famous cosmologist who wrote the book World Blue Dot, Carl Sagan, or any such subject, you read and then you see, like the whole concept of computer today, based on binary things, 0 and 1. Binary system would not have been possible if there had been no Indian mathematicians in the world. And these were all the people who were doing subjectively all these things. My point here is not to brag about what Indians did. What I am trying to say is that there is a whole method of acquiring knowledge by which these boundaries between these two things now are merging, and therefore there is a good reason for everybody sitting in this room to say, okay, then let me think about what is this consciousness. And I am only going to introduce one word which all of us must remember and then search for it, and that is called Atma. Body, mind and intellect, these are the properties which both the West and the East have described. The psychologists, the philosophers and various thinkers in the world have described body, mind and intellect. The only word Atma has not been described anywhere else in the world except in India. And this whole talk today is only because there is Atma. And if there is no Atma, there is no talk here. Now this Atma is something which is not something we can say, I don't see Atma. What? There is Atma. Because I am experiencing up to mind, I know, because my mind is so agitated that I know I have mind. If the mind becomes very quiet, you are afraid, you know. People don't like silence at all in this country. I am surprised when they go for jogging, they all have to have the machines on that. I said, why don't you keep quiet? Why do you want to hear music from outside? Your inner music is not enough. There is no inner music. We constantly have to have bombardment from outside. People are afraid of peace. You keep them quiet in one room and they say, oh my God, now what will I do? Sitting for 5-10 minutes quietly is so difficult. And these rishis are talking about sitting silently for hours together. What is? But in order for me to acquire the inner being that I am, in order to find my inner being, I only have to go back to my own self. That is the only way I can find. Unfortunately, we are so social beings that even for 5 minutes, if somebody says you sit in that corner by yourself, then there is agitation. That is why the idea of Atma is not that easy to grasp for most of the people, and not just Western people. Even the people in India who are the heirs of these rishis, they also wonder if there is any Atma. And sometimes they behave like that, there is no Atma. But the point is that once the idea of Atma is accepted in mind theoretically, because since you have not experienced, you don't have to believe in it, right? And Atma is not a matter of belief. Atma is a matter of experience. And therefore, there is a technique by which we can experience it. And this whole idea of holistic living, the holistic idea, subject holistic comes only when you don't want to study the fragments. You don't want to understand the wholeness by going in fragments. You want to experience the wholeness itself. I don't want to understand the tree by studying leaves and seeds and twigs and branches and describing what is a tree. I want to become tree myself. I want to be one with the tree in order for me to know what is tree. In medical school, we study human bodies, not human beings, you know. And ultimate result, you know that in doctors, when you go there, you are a body there, you are not a being. And he is looking at your pockets. What is the amount of bill you are going to pay? There is no being there. There is a body. And this part, that once we become clear in our head that we are all beings, unfortunately, there is another word which is called human doings, not human beings. We are human doings. So we keep on doing. We cannot be human being, and Ramadin was asking about being. We are doings, we are not beings. So in order to become aware of this fundamental fact, first of all, let us recognize that we are beings. Once we recognize that, the journey begins. And there is no guarantee that you will find Atma. But there is it. But if you have the courage to say, I am going to find it, you find it. And there is assurance about that. And for that, there is always a teacher who is already enlightened about this process. So he makes your path easy. And I have gone through some of the experiences myself in person, but I cannot describe it here. But I can tell you, first time I realized that, oh my God, there is something that is way beyond me. It does not require my physical existence. It is something beyond me. And that is possible that I can feel it myself if I am blessed by somebody and in some technique and in some way I can purify myself. So, in order for us to understand the meaning of this today's whole seminar, I would say that we have to start focusing within ourselves to say, who really I am, the first question that is being asked. And normally, we are having our identity, which is given by, when we are born, we are given identity. In America, the identity has to be given right away in the hospital. Luckily, in India, we had 5-6 days before we were given names. But in here, if you can immediately you have to have a name. That means you are identified as Bob or John or Tony or Ronnie or whatever, right away as you are born, and that's what you are. Now you are Johnny for the rest of your life. And then your parents give you further identification. You are smart, you are crazy, you are dull. So we got one more identification. And then you go to job and you got another identification. And we start knowing ourselves only by what others have always told us. I am Dr. Mehta because somebody told me so. And this is the journey where everything stops. And once I have my false identity, then the rest of the creation that I am putting on is all wrong. But I can never realize it. The interesting part about life is that there are 2 points. One is the beginning, when we are born. So before I was born, what was there? Nothing. And then I am dead. What is after that? Nothing. So I come from nothing and I go to nothing. So it does not matter then. If there is no Atma, then nothing matters, because the rest is not matter anyway. So we have to get this gist of the idea. First, even an inclination to think that I have to think about myself is the first blessing of God that you should consider. The first time even that question comes to your mind, who am I, it means now awakening has started. It may take few more months in Indian system, we don't have to be realizing this year. We don't die in India. There is always life after life. There is no life after death. And death after life. There is life after life. And this life after life is the evolution, because the Atma goes through the journey. Ultimately, it becomes one with the blissful self that soul is, the Atma is. So, Vedanta has described all this in various ways. And since I don't want to take a long time here in talking, I just want to create a sort of a feeling in your mind that we know about this creation, we know about our world, we know about our family in a very limited way, what we call know. Because what we don't know is so much more than what we know. Even that knowledge, if we have, first of all, that I don't know almost nothing, that means now I have got some sense at least. Now I have awakened that at least I know that I know nothing. And once that happens, now the journey begins. And that is the meaning of this seminar. If the journey begins today, that means if first time ever in my mind that question sticks while I leave this room and say, who am I really? And so the whole day was wasted. These people have talked about who am I? Oh, I know who am I. I am John, and I have to go to job tomorrow morning, and I have to rush to the I know what I am, and I am in my rut. As far as I am in my rut of following the pre-programmed mind, we have many files written in our computers. You know, thousands of files are written in our computer, and every day we are adding files in our computer, and unfortunately God has not given a delete button. So the files keep compiling in it, and we keep identifying. As soon as I meet Ramadin, I have 1,000 files about him. As soon as I see him, files open. I don't have to see him. On phone somebody says, oh, Mr. Patel is calling you. I say, which Patel? Oh, that one. Immediately I know that scoundrel is calling me, because I know my files are open. My files are open. So the point is, if I cannot delete my files, I at least have one scope for me, and that is I become very conscious that I have files. And that I am going to stop using my old files in order to write my tomorrow. If I cannot delete my files, but if I can say I am full of files which are bothering me and not allowing me to change my viewpoint, then at least let me change my files. And let me write some new files from tomorrow about my mother, about my wife, about my children, about my family, about my country. Let me write some new files. Because we are so proud about what we know, you know. We are so proud about what we know that we cannot know anything more. One of the greatest problems why we cannot learn new things, because we know too much. While I am sitting in the chair and Dr. Mehta is talking, I think what he is going to tell, I know already. That's it. My door is closed. The first requirement is to start writing a new file. I cannot tell you that you believe in anything I say. You don't believe in anything. You don't take any message from here. Only if you can recognize that we are bundles of files written by since the childhood we were born, we know we have files written, and these files are playing our role. If we can recognize that, the first chapter for spiritual journey begins. If I recognize that I have old files, and I am prepared to rewrite some new files, my chapter for new life begins. And that is what this holistic living is all about. The world view cannot change. Our rishis said, the two last point I will make, and that is, there are two different ways of looking at the world. There is one way that we are tuned to in Western world, which is called individualism. I am something. And everything, the world rotates around me. And that is why there is an I in the center, then there is one circle outside I that is called family. Then there is another circle which is your friend, then there is a circle which is the world, and so on. The circles are many. And there, as soon as I wants to become, let's say I starts moving and wants to go and cross the limit, there is a circle there. It is a resistance there, full circle. You cannot cross it. So you are colliding. So I cannot become we even. In America, I never, after marriage also, I does not become we. I remains I. And in India, it was required that I becomes we. That means after marriage, there is a next level which is called grastashram, where you become we. And beyond that, you grow, then there is another circle. Oh, so there are conflicts of interest in this circle. In Indian system of thinking, there is I in the center, and then there is a circle which is an ever-expanding circle. It has no boundary. It is an ever-expanding circle, which means the I is trying to become we, and is trying to expand with becoming one with the village, one with the town, one with the city, one with the country, one with the world, one with the cosmos. All animals, plants, flora, fauna, mountains, rivers, everything becomes a part of my I, that is called the ever-expanding self-I, where I becomes Brahman. And that is why the Vedic Rishi said, Aham Brahmasmi. I am myself the Brahman. I am myself the God. I am myself the final infinite. That expression comes because I is constantly expanding circle, not with different circles around the I. If you can see that, visualize that, then you will see that there is a total different viewpoint, and accordingly the cultures, the history, the whole thing becomes different to the world. And that is why we, in order to become familiar with this new way of thinking and knowing there is Atma, and just to believe that there is an Atma, and that Atma's journey continues forever till we meet the infinite, that is possible only when we start writing some new files today. I think because the time is short, I cannot keep on expanding this subject, but if you can carry this message, I will be happy that you learn something. Thank you very much.